Hey gang, welcome back to Films from A to Z. I took last week off, not intentionally. I don't know, video making was just kind of a to me for a couple weeks there. So I'm going to jump back into the game, force myself up, and see if we can't continue. I am still going to do G. I'm going to do G and H together in one video so we can get through this. Last week was the letter G. I did the Glenn Miller story starring Jimmy Stewart, June Allison, and Harry Morgan, who I absolutely adore from MASH. MASH being my favorite show ever. I finally found, and I'd never seen this, a Jimmy Stewart film that I don't care for. I really just... I liked everything about the characters. I loved Jimmy's acting. It's always on spot for me. He is my favorite actor of all time. But something about the story, I don't know. I don't know if it felt rushed, it just had an off feeling about it. I don't know anything about Glenn Miller anyway. So going into it blind, I thought, yeah, I don't know anything about him. I don't care. I love movies. I love Jimmy Stewart. And I just didn't really care for the film. I didn't hate it, didn't love it. One of those kind of relationships with it. And just really unsatisfied. I can't go into Glenn Miller that much as a real-life person. So we'll just stick to a little bit of the movie. 1954, Jimmy Stewart starring as Glenn Miller. He's a trombone player. He takes little odd jobs here and there between gigs. He pawns his trombone a lot to get, to live, and then goes back and gets it back and pawns and gets it back. Living day to day, living paycheck to paycheck kind of thing. Eventually gets married, which there's a long story in between there that's kind of funny. How he and this girl start dating, continue relationship, and get married. It's a little humorous how she still doesn't know that they're together because there's like 2-year gaps between him calling her and stuff. They eventually get married. He has little success, then starts getting more successful, and then finds his own thing, which I understand nothing about. What they were talking about with his own sound and the way he writes and stuff. None of that means anything to me, so I'm like lost in that part. But still interesting to hear that he did all of this. And then, of course, Christmas Day, the fateful Christmas Day, 1944, Glenn dies in a plane wreck on his way to a concert in the military. He's in the Air Force, I believe. Maybe, but he's in the band, and they perform for all the troops and things like that. And it has a really, really sweet ending where the band plays on even though he's died in this plane wreck, and does something really special for his wife that means something. Earlier in the film, you'll find out if you've seen this. I'd love to hear from somebody that has seen this and does enjoy it. And maybe let me know a little bit more. I didn't even research Glenn Miller that much because it just didn't fascinate me enough to go in and find out anything about him. And I'm usually all over that stuff. I usually want to know and know and know. And I don't know if it just felt like there's something off. It either felt like a play to me or a made-for-TV movie that was poorly done. Just the storytelling in general, the jumping. I don't know. There was something, and it definitely wasn't the acting. Everybody in it did a great job, and I don't know. So that's G. Sorry it wasn't so grand. Here's the box set. I have the James Stewart box set. Has Next Time We Love, You Gotta Stay Happy, Thunderbag, Glenn Miller Story, and Shenandoah, which when I was doing my alphabet this past summer, I owned 5 copies of Shenandoah somehow in different box sets and by themselves. The inside of the box set, of course, It's on three DVDs. Nice little box set. It's looking forward to watching a couple of these that I haven't seen. You Gotta Stay Happy. That might be the only one I haven't seen on here, besides the Glenn Miller story. I have another box set that has a couple on it I haven't seen, and I get them mixed up. So anyway, yeah, Glenn Miller story. Not too bad. Not too good. Just, yeah. Alright, now we're going to go on to H. H, I was going to watch Haunted Honeymoon with, Gene Wilder. That's it. Gene Wilder and, who else is in that? Dom DeLuise. But I got sidetracked and forgot what I was going to watch. And in looking for an H movie, I thought, oh, let's watch Hell Comes to Frogtown. So, starring Roddy Piper, this is late 80s. Very much bad it's good film. Not as bad as it could have been. Starring Roddy Piper, who passed away in 2015. I was a big fan. Up until just a few years ago, I was really into wrestling. I had switched and started watching old stuff again. Didn't really care for any of the new stuff. Piper's always been top of my list. I had a chance to meet him it was about a year before he died, maybe, in Indianapolis at Days of the Dead. And I have to say, honestly, hands down, one of probably the nicest celebrities I've ever met at any convention I've went to. This guy was genuinely into you for the 3 or 4 minutes you got to talk to him, which is not normal for a celebrity meeting at a table. Usually it's just a couple words, sign, and move on. Had my son with me. He made a big deal out of my son, talked to him a lot. We got a picture. It was fantastic. I really, really enjoyed meeting this guy. And it was a really sad news to me when he died. Not very often. Usually it's like, man, that sucks. But when it's somebody you've watched all your life and you've met in person and they pass away, it's like, man, damn. It's that lingering thought that maybe I'll get to meet him again one day or whatever. But I did get his autograph. I got his autograph on a copy of They Live. And I have to say, I thoroughly enjoy Hell Comes to Frogtown. Now, Piper plays a guy named Hell. His last name's Hell, Sam Hell. And, of course, he goes to Frogtown, which is a mutant town now where people have been mutated into frogs. Now, the government is kind of a really weird opening to get you in the mix of what's going on. The government has been taken over by women. Not taken over. It has been continued by women, I guess is the correct way to say that. Women run the government, whatever. However you want to say that. That's where we start out at. Almost all the population is sterile. Piper is a guy that is overly fertile. So they have him as I guess, government agent is what you would call him. That they're going to Helltown because there's a group of females that are very fertile that have been kidnapped and placed in a palace. At Frogtown by frog people. So he goes, he's with this group of females, a doctor, scientist / chick, and an army military chick, and they are in charge of taking him there. He has a kind of like a chastity belt, but it's rigged to blow if he gets too far away from the beacon that is hidden inside of one of the girl's earrings. And I know this sounds way worse than it is, guys. I'm doing a horrible job of explaining how okay this movie is. It's just a fun sci-fi, so bad it's good action type film. It really it's 80s. It's 80s, okay? But anyway, he has to go to Frogtown and retrieve these girls. So I'm going to stop there with what the movie itself, because that's what it is. And you can watch it and love it like I do. The makeup in this with the frogs is actually pretty damn good for frog people. I mean, literal frog people. I mean, people with frog heads. I mean, the makeup is actually done fairly well. It's it really surprised me. I had not seen this in a very long time. I found this at a pawn shop with DEFCON 4 attached to it, which I've never seen. May get to watch it someday. Anyway, Hell Comes to Frogtown. But yeah, I really enjoy this. It's one of those movies that you can just sit back and check your brain at the door kind of thing and go in and just watch the hell out of it. There is, which I don't know how many people know this, I don't own it, but I have looked for it before. It's really hard to find. Might not be now. I haven't looked for it in a long while. Frogtown 2. There is a sequel to this. It does have the character Sam Hell in it, but is not played by Piper. It's played by Robert Zadar, I believe is how you say his last name. He is one of the ugliest individuals you will ever see. He is, the only thing I know him from is Maniac Cop, and I believe he's a bad guy in Tango and Cash. He has an enormous head. Like, his head is the size of my head, counting my beard. That's his chin, okay? And it's just gigantic. He's like cartoon proportioned head. He had some kind of disorder that extended all of his facial features. So he is like really cartoony looking. But there is a sequel. It is called Frogtown 2, 1992 or 93, I believe. When I couldn't remember the guy's name. I knew who he was, could see his face, but I couldn't remember what it was, so I looked it up on IMDb. It got like a 2.9 rating on IMDb, which doesn't mean shit. I'm sure this is fabulous. I'm sure it's not as good as Piper's, not as good as Roddy's, but I'm sure it's okay. So I will be on the lookout for it and waste $4 or $5 on it, I'm sure. So that's it. Until next time, guys, I've got my head screwed on a little tighter. Just one of those slumps where you just can't, whatever, can't do what you can't do. Feeling better now, so on with the show. Next week, we got the letter I. I was going to do the remake to It, just because I absolutely love it because of new horror being so shitty. But I decided to do something else. I can't say equally as violent because it takes the cake. So next week we're going to talk about a lot of violence and a really good cult classic type. I don't even know what to call it right off the top of my head, but it's good. Anyway, until next time, guys, thanks for watching.